All right, so since we are not in the building today and you do not have access to me for questions, I thought it would be nice for you guys to have a little video that you could follow along in case you were having trouble with any of the types of problems that'll be in your quiz tomorrow. So here we go. As a reminder, the steps for solving an absolute value equation. First, the absolute value bars have to be by themselves. Okay, so if you've got x plus 1 in absolute value, you got to make sure that there's no plus 2 out there, so that the absolute value is by itself. In that case, you could subtract 2 on both sides, and then absolute value would be by itself, and you'd be done with step 1. From there, you're going to see whether or not it is possible to do the equation. Remember that as long as it's 0 or positive, so in this case, we'd have x plus 1 equals 0. 0 is okay. Negative numbers are not. You cannot take the absolute value of something and get a negative answer. And so if it's set equal to a negative, you're going to say no solution. From there, you're going to set up 2 equations. And for the first equation, you're going to use just the original equation. And for the second equation, you're going to do the exact same thing on the left side, but on the right side, you're going to make it negative. And for both of them, you're going to take out those absolute value signs. And in step 3, you no longer need to have those absolute value signs. The 2 equations are taking care of that possibility. And then for step 4, if necessary, go ahead and solve both equations. So let's see what that looks like here. Okay, so number 1 here, we've got the absolute value of b equals 4. So step 1 is it by itself? Is the absolute value bars by itself? Yes, it is in this case. Step 2, is it possible? Well, yeah, it's a positive number. We can get a positive answer when we take absolute value. So step 2 is a-okay. Step 3 is to set up those 2 equations. Your first equation, just the normal equation, the way it's written without the absolute value. And then your second equation, the same equation on the left side, the b, except you're going to make it negative on the right side. Step 4 is to solve, but in this case, you've already done, or there's nothing inside the absolute value to do, and so we're done here. B equals 4 and b equals negative 4. As a reminder, that's saying that the absolute value of negative 4 is 4 and the absolute value of 4 is 4 when we substitute them back in for b. Okay, next one here. The absolute value of p equals 2. So you're gonna, step 1, is the absolute value by itself? Well, yeah, it is. Step 2, is it possible? We've got a positive number here, so it is possible. Step 3, set up 2 equations. Left side as is, right side as is for their first equation. The second equation, left side as is, but the right side has to be negative. And then step 4 would be to solve, if there's anything to solve. In this case, p is already by itself, so we do not need to solve anything. And we can go back and check our answers. The absolute value of 2 is 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. All right, so leveling up just a little bit here. The absolute value of v over 5 equals 3. And so the absolute value is still by itself. There's nothing going on outside of the absolute value bar. So step 1 is still done for us. Step 2, is it possible? We've got a positive number there, so we're good to go there. And then from there, you've got to set up 2 equations. Step 3 is to set up the 2 equations. So you have v over 5 equals 3 and v over 5 equals negative 3. Okay, your 2 equations, left side stays the same, right side is One of them is positive and one of them needs to be negative. So we finally have a step 4 to do here. We need to solve. So we're going to undo this division. You've got divide by 5 down here. We're going to undo division with multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 5 on both sides. 5 over 5 is 1. So V equals 15. And then over here we've got divide by 5. So we're going to undo that with multiplication. Running out of room here, but we'll squeeze it in. So we multiplied by 5 on both sides, and over there V equals negative 15. So now you got two possible answers. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Absolute value of that is 3. Negative 15 divided by 5, substituting that back in, is negative 3, and the absolute value of that is 3. So we're good to go. Number 4. Step 1, absolute value by itself, check. Step 2, is it possible? I've got a positive number on the right side, so we're good with step 2. Step 3, set up those two equations. So we've got negative 7n equals 63, and negative 7n equals negative 63. All right, step 4 is to solve both those equations. We're going to undo multiplication. You got negative 7 times n here. So we're going to undo that multiplication with division. Divide by negative 7 on both sides. N equals negative 9. And divide by negative 7 on both sides. N equals positive 9. So again, you can substitute both those back in. You're going to get a true statement of 63. Step 4, done. Number 5. All right, step 1. Get absolute value by itself. Done. Step 2, is it possible? Yep. We got a positive number on the right side. We can definitely have a positive answer when we take an absolute value. Step 3, two equations. So you've got negative 2p plus 4 equals 20. Negative 2p plus 4 equals negative 20. We're going to undo addition or subtraction first for a two-step equation. So we're going to subtract 4 on both sides. Negative 2p equals 16. Undo multiplication with division. Divide by negative 2 on both sides. So you have p equals negative 8 for your first solution. And then over here, we're going to subtract 4 on both sides. Negative 2p equals negative 24. Divide by negative 2 on both sides to undo that multiplication. And p equals 12 this time. So again, you can substitute negative 8 back in for p. You can substitute 12 back in for p. They're both going to give you 20. Number 6. The absolute value of 5a minus 5 equals 10. Step 1 is to get absolute value by itself. Check. Step 2, is it possible? Check. We can have a positive number over here, no big deal. Step 3. Two equations. So we have 5a minus 5 equals 10. And 5a minus 5 equals negative 10. We're going to undo subtraction first. Add 5 to both sides. 5a equals 15. Undo multiplication with division. And a equals 3 for our first solution. 5 times 3 is 15. Minus 5 is 10. Absolute value of that is 10. For our second equation, we're going to add 5 to both sides. 5a equals negative 5. Undo multiplication with division. And a equals negative 1. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Minus 5 is negative 10. Absolute value of negative 10 is in fact 10.